All right, folks, if you're watching this, you probably have at some point learned about the preamble, the first paragraph to the good old Constitution. Should have learned about Article 1, 2, and 3. One dealt with the legislative branch, two dealt with the presidency or the executive branch, and then Article 3 was the judicial branch. And at some point, you may have looked at some principles in terms of, federalism, separation of powers. These things seem foreign to you. You may want to go back and take a look at the principles of the Constitution. I have a video about that as well. So today we're going to talk about the ratification of the Constitution. And as we begin to discuss that, you have to realize that in 1787, when our founding fathers got together in Philadelphia, they built a government, they wrote a constitution, but at that point, it was not put in play. Like it wasn't part of our federal government. This document was debated, it was discussed, and the delegates had approved it. But at that point, the Constitution actually had to be given to the states for their approval. Or if you don't know the term ratification, to ratify, or if we were to mention the ratification debate, that would be about that the states had to approve it. So to ratify means to approve, to accept, to adopt as one's own. There's a multitude of terms you could use for that, but ratification is approval, right? Each state is going to hold their own little convention. They're going to review the document and either approve or, not approve or not adopt or not ratify that government. For the Constitution to go in effect, 9 of the 13 states had to approve it. As we will see, there's going to be two sides to this faction as we move forward here. All right. What is the Great Debate? Well, you got two sides. You have a group of people known as the Federalists, and you also have a group of people known as the Anti-Federalists, or these are the anti-federal arguments. All right. So what did the Federalists want? They wanted a stronger national government. Why? The government at the top, the federal government, needed more power to protect, to provide, to take care of the people. They also said that a Bill of Rights was not necessary. You didn't necessarily have to write something down, freedom of speech, freedom of press, those sorts of things, because there were limits put on that Constitution. There are limits on our government. There are checks and balances. We separated powers, so you don't necessarily need a Bill of Rights. Well, contrary to what the Federalists thought, the Anti-Federalists are going to write out a series of papers and their thoughts on, hey, this government needs to be a little weaker than you guys made it to be. It's definitely too strong, and we're worried that a stronger government will threaten the rights of the people. So a weaker government would not threaten the rights of the people or the powers of the states. They were concerned about people's powers and states' powers or state rights, right? They said, listen, the Constitution's okay, you got checks and balances, that's nice, that's all good, but you must add a Bill of Rights. I want it written down. Something has to protect my freedoms. So they wanted this Bill of Rights certainly written down. So you have the two sides. Quickly, to kind of move along with the sheet I provided for you, it's pretty nice. Federalist and simple. What do they want? Favor ratification. The Anti-Federalists oppose ratification. If you can keep those two groups apart, it's really going to help you understand political parties later on. We talk about the development of political parties. So know who the Federalists are and who the Anti-Federalists are. The first 5 states ratified the Constitution pretty quickly, and by 1788, 9 of the 13 states actually ratified it. They said we like it. The only problem was 2 of the larger states had not dealt with it yet, New York and Virginia. And even though the rules said 9 of the states were needed and they got to none of the states, it was thought, it was felt at that time, if New York doesn't like it, or Virginia, the most populous state, they had the most people out of any other state. If they didn't like it, we're probably not going to keep it. So we have to deal with Virginia and New York. And as we begin to look through, James Madison begins off as a staunch Federalist. He's fighting for ratification. He agrees with the document, and he wants to see it pass. George Mason and Patrick Henry were opposed, and these are 2 guys who were in Virginia with James Madison. So you can imagine the banter between these Virginians going back and forth. All right. The state of Virginia actually approves the Constitution, but they say maybe we want to add some certain amendments to that. And as we'll find out later on, Madison's the guy that's going to actually write that stuff. All right. So in New York, the other larger state at that time, they began to write things like the Federalist Papers. So I mean, what the Federalist Papers were, and they're kind of one of the most esteemed documents in our nation. Ever read them? They're fantastic, right? They're a series of pro-ratification essays they wrote as like a commercial for the Constitution. They wrote these papers to the Anti-Federalists. Read this. Listen, the Constitution is good. We have checks and balances. Don't worry about factions or one particular group of people taking over the government. The nation's so big, it's not going to happen. All right? So the Federalist Papers were in favor of voting for the Constitution, or ratification as it's called, right? Hamilton's a big-time Federalist. He's going to write some of these, John Jay, and actually James Madison is going to write some of these Federalist Papers. Why? Well, he's a Federalist. He's fighting for it. Madison will eventually agree with some of what the Anti-Federalists are saying, and he will eventually pen or write the Bill of Rights, right? These papers helped turn the tide against the Anti-Federalists led by George Clinton. So who's going to win this argument? The Federalists, because they get a new Constitution. But as we good old Americans do, we like to compromise here. So what do the Anti-Federalists get? Well, Congress acted in response. After the Constitution is ratified, what we do is we add a Bill of Rights. So it's kind of written by James Madison. And what are the Bill of Rights? The first 10 amendments to the Constitution. If you need to know specifically what those are, we got another video that's on that. Please feel free to watch that, subscribe to the page, and you'll be able to see that. So good luck on the ratification debate. The big key here is simply knowing who the Anti-Federalists are and what they want. Know, if I could scroll back here for you, knowing who the Federalists are and what they want. If you get that, you'll be okay on that. So good luck, and we'll see you next time. Bye.